Hello, my Facebook friends. I am Melissa Steele, host of Melissa's Musing. The lighting is a little funky. And real estate agent extraordinaire. So I've had some stuff coming up for me in the last few days. I don't know what has been up with me, but I think the universe has been giving me the gift of forgetfulness to teach me these really important lessons. I've made a few really silly mistakes over the last few days, and they've been just that, really silly mistakes. Ones that were silly, so my self-beat-up game was really strong. I'm going to use the example of what happened yesterday as the perfect example. Hi friends, thanks for joining. CJ, Dustin, Paul, all my peeps, thanks for joining. This is going to be potentially emotional. Alex, all my peeps coming in. Thank you guys for joining. So, yesterday, we get to our open house. I was in charge of the open house flyers. I was like super on top of my shit. Get to the car. And then I realized I forgot my keys. And I ran back into the house for my keys. I put everything down right by the front door and ran back out to the car. And we got to our open house. I realized that I had left the open house flyers right by the front door. And like my first reaction was like, oh my God, babe, I'm so sorry. And he was like, it's okay. And I was like, oh no, like, oh my goodness. And I start like frantically looking all around the car. And he's like, babe, you probably forgot the open house flyers. It's fine. And I was like, oh, how could I be so stupid? And he's like, where is that even coming from? Like, what do you mean? How could I be so stupid? You forgot something. It's not a big deal. And he moved on from it in like 2 seconds. And I literally got to our open house and I like felt so terrible about forgetting the open house flyers, which like everybody forgets things, that I literally like wanted to cry. This expectation that I was like, my whole, like, I like felt as though like I had let John down in such a capacity for forgetting something so silly. And his reaction was just like so him. John is always, like, I'm going to use this space to give my husband a shout out. John is always extremely patient, extremely kind, and really understanding. So, like, he gets back from putting out all the open house signs and he's like, babe, I can't believe you're still like stressed about the open house flyers. It's totally fine. Like, anybody that comes in, I'm going to ask them to sign in. I'll send them all the information after the open house. In hindsight, like, not a big deal. Literally, we got, like, everybody to sign in that went, and they're all getting the information that would have been on the open house flyer. And there was like no cause or no reason for me to feel like complete shit about forgetting something. But I did. I felt like complete shit about it. And then yesterday night, I made another mistake. A really stupid mistake. Very similar to the open house flyers. But right away, I was like, oh my God, Melissa, you're so stupid. And that self-beat up being so hard, like coming at me so strong. And then this morning, something happened too. And in hindsight, I could have reacted in a variety of different ways. I'm not going to go into detail about what I did today, but another really stupid fucking mistake. And I got in the car and I was immediately like, oh my God, John, I'm so sorry. I just made the stupidest mistake. And like, I went into it and I like almost had a panic attack about the mistake that I'd made because I felt like I'd made so many mistakes in the last 48 hours that it just like was not acceptable. And John's patience was so like impactful for me because he didn't even lose his cool, like zero. He was like, okay, take a deep breath. Like, why, you know what I mean? Like, I understand, here's some feedback for next time where you could have done better, but don't be so hard on yourself. Mistakes happen. That was his reaction, where I'm literally like, oh my God, I made another mistake. I'm so ridiculously sorry. And John was like, babe, where is all of this coming from? He's like, this is your issue. This is what's coming up for you with your unrealistic expectations. And you know what? I put myself in the opposite shoes. And I recognize that if John had forgotten the open house flyers, I would have for sure been like, babe, how did you forget that? Weren't they right by the door? I'm not going to lie to you guys. I 100% would have done that. And I'm not proud of it. And with today's mistake, I literally would have probably freaked out. I would have been like, that's such a stupid mistake to make. I probably literally would have given him that feedback. And what was so impactful for me today was that he didn't have that reaction. John is always so consistently patient. His state of being is always so even keel. And John lives in a really, I feel like, I'm going to grab a tissue, in a really stable place emotionally, where clearly I do not. I am starting to recognize in the last 48 hours that this is absolutely where so much of my anxiety comes from, my unrealistic expectations that I put on myself. The fact that I'll start out one of my days maybe with 500 things on my to-do list, and I'll get 100 of them done, and like any other human being would be so fucking proud of themselves for all that shit that they did, and the only thing I can focus on is the 400 things that I didn't do. And even if the list is 10 things long, and I've done 9 of them, I'll be too focused on the one that I didn't get done. Where John's perspective is so different. He's so proud of himself when he gets his 9 things done. And what has been so inspirational for me in the last 48 hours with John's consistency and his patience and who he is, who he be, John is constantly in a state of patience. He is constantly in a state of understanding. And it's been so inspiring to me because those are characteristics that I'm continually working on and that I continually want to be better at myself. And I feel so grateful today after I had my own panic attack and mental breakdown over the mistake that I made, while John was like, this is difficult and we'll deal with it, and whatever happens will happen, but the mistake is made and we'll deal with whatever happens from it. And that level of grace and ease and understanding was so inspirational because I didn't even have it for myself. I literally had this panic attack and this mental breakdown, and John was like, oh my god, babe, if I come back from showings in 4 hours and you're still in this hardcore of a beat up mode, we get to have a conversation. And before he walked out the door to do his showings, I grabbed his hands and I looked him in the eyes and I acknowledged him for how patient he really is with me all the time and with everyone, with our assistants, with our employees, with our clients. And while I can maintain that patience in a public space, right? I'm not going to, if one of our assistants forgets something, I'm not how did you forget that? No, of course not. I'll be I'll offer them constructive feedback. We'll have a conversation about it. But then I will still carry agitation. I will have, because I had an unrealistic expectation for the assistant, I'll be agitated that they forgot or that they made the mistake, right? And that's not an okay mentality. And granted, I really I think the dynamic that we have for, as management is really awesome, and I think our team really feels supported by us. But I feel from John's support and reactions when I make mistakes, it's just been so interesting to me to see how different his reactions are than mine. And then also, I think it's really interesting, just from an observation standpoint, how stable John's health is, how stable John's mentality is, and how not unstable mine is in comparison, but I fluctuate. I'm much more emotional. I'll get much more attached. I'll cry when a client's transaction falls out because I feel guilty, I should have done something more or better, even though I literally did the best that I could the entire time. I'll be in such a deep self-beat-up mode that I'll be wondering what I could have done better at any point in the road, even though it was totally out of my control. So what's been coming up for me, and thank you guys so much for all the love and for watching my additional meltdown here. But ultimately, one, I really wanted to come to this space to give my husband a shout out because I am continually impressed by the way he handles things and by the person that he is. I feel so grateful, and honestly, something that I'm really struggling with today is I feel undeserving of the patience. I don't have the patience for myself, so I feel really undeserving of how gracious he's been for me in the last 48 hours as I've been making mistakes right and left. And I truly feel like the universe has been giving me this gift of making like 10 mistakes in a row. Because literally, I don't typically make mistakes. I have such an unrealistic expectation. I have this commitment to not dropping balls. And for those of you who work or know me, like, my word is fucking gold. So if I tell you I'm going to do something, like last week, I had committed to hosting my friend's baby shower. And amidst everything going on, us moving and doing 900 things, was that the best thing for me? No. But I literally was up until 2 in the morning making a freaking diaper cake because I was that committed to my word. Could I have renegotiated? Yes, 100%. But that would have made, like, because of this unrealistic expectation that I have on myself, I would have felt like shit about it. And so it's a huge eye-opening experience for me in these last 48 hours, seeing the grace that John and, like, my assistants and literally every single person around me has had for myself except for me. I have had literally no grace for myself whatsoever. And I've been in like this terrible self-beat-up conversation. And why I'm committed to sharing this with you right now is because I often coach on unworthiness and self-beat-up. And it's something that I like to coach because it's a continual reminder for myself of where I get to grow. Because, you know, the best way to learn is by teaching, right? And so I constantly get outraged by friends and family who struggle with worthiness and with that conversation. And I am 100% with you, my friends. I struggle with that conversation too. And it's a really difficult conversation. I'm continually feeling like I'm not good enough. I will work an 18-hour day and I feel bad about the 5 things I didn't do. So if you are also in this conversation, I encourage you to journal and meditate like I have been in the last 24 hours. I encourage you to acknowledge the people around you who are really patient, because they're full of grace. And it's such a beautiful characteristic and a state of being. And I also encourage you to ask for feedback. I asked my assistants for feedback. And I'm always really open to feedback. I feel like feedback, while it can be extremely difficult to hear, can be some of the most powerful growth opportunities. So I asked my assistants for feedback, and I asked them to support me moving forward because a lot of our assistants obviously interact with John and I on a daily basis. They see the way we interact with each other. And I'm sure they've been witness to at least one moment where I have probably unintentionally, but probably made John feel like shit. I'm sure, because I continually make myself feel like shit about any mistakes that I make, so I can pretty much guarantee you that I am making the people around me feel like shit when they make mistakes too. So what has been really amazing about the last 48 hours, while I'm clearly like in meltdown status, I think the last 48 hours have been really powerful for me because I really am starting to recognize what's in my gap. I'm really starting to recognize where I get to learn and grow. And so after I acknowledge John for being so patient, such a saint, and also recognizing for any times where I've made him feel like shit because of my unrealistic expectation. That's my shit, right? That's what I'm bringing to the table. Everybody makes mistakes. So after I acknowledged John for that, I called my assistants and I asked them, moving forward, whether in private or in public, if they see me communicating in a space that's not supportive and patient, I want that feedback. Either in the moment, like, hey Mel, I feel like that's not fair conversation that you're having with John, or after. Hey, I observed something earlier today and it made me uncomfortable, or I felt like you could have been more patient, or I feel like you had an unrealistic expectation. I literally called my assistants and had that conversation with them because I am recognizing very, very, very clearly, thank you, what's in my gap. So that's been my lesson for this weekend, you guys. It's one that I really struggle with. I continually feel like I'm not good enough. I continually feel like I'm not worthy. And I continually feel like no matter how much I do, it's not good enough. And I know that I'm not the only one with this conversation. So, I'm also going to ask you guys. I'm literally going to ask you, because this is what's in my gap. I am committed to patience. I'm committed to getting out of the self-beat-up game. I'm committed to my worthiness. I am worthy as fuck, you guys. I'm really an amazing person. I work my ass off for my clients. I have literally never met a human being who works as hard as I do. And I don't know why it's never good enough for myself. So, I'm calling on you peeps because I am always there for you guys. You know that anytime I get a direct message or an ask for support, I am 1,000% there for you. And if you've never reached out to me for support, you get to, if you're struggling with something. But what I'm going to ask for you is, I'm committed to changing my conversation. I am worthy. I am really brilliant. I'm really fucking smart. I have worked my ass off since I started my first company when I was 10 years old. And I'm really committed to changing the conversation and the unrealistic expectations that I have for myself and for everybody else. So, for those of you that are my friends, that interact with me, that are in my space, I encourage you to be interruptive with your feedback. I am asking for it. I want it. When I have a conversation that's one that shows underlying unworthiness, I want to be called out on that shit. When I am experiencing an impatient moment, I want you to call me out on that shit. When I am in a state of self-beat up, I want you to look me in the eye and ask me why. And I want you to love me unconditionally, regardless of the mistakes that I make. Because that's what John does for me. And that's the greatest love that anybody could ever want or ask for. And so I'm really committed to changing that behavior in myself. I'm committed to supporting you guys with whatever it is that you need. And I'm really committed to changing the expectations that I have of other people. I really am. So if at any point you feel as though I'm putting an unrealistic expectation on you, or I have an unrealistic expectation of something we've agreed to, or your commitment to something, I want you to be straight up with me. You guys know I'm no bullshit. I'm as straight as it gets, my friends. I lay it all out on the table, and I was here having literally a meltdown as John is handling our work, because his even keelness and just how he handles things, he's like totally unaffected by the mistake that I made. Yes, we may together deal with some repercussions because it was a silly mistake that I made, and you know, we have a business that we run and we're in the public eye and all these things, and nothing could come of it, or something could come of it. But like, he's not sitting there stressed about what's potentially going to happen a week from now or a month from now, because that time doesn't exist, and John knows that his time is now, and where he's at is right now, and he's with clients, and he's amazing. And like, here I am tormenting myself with all of this self beat up and self-loathing, and like, literally he left and I wanted to like barf. I had this like sick feeling in the pit of my stomach that I don't have the same grace for myself that my husband has for me. It's so interesting. Like, what an eye-opening experience. Oh, so that's what I'm committed to, you guys. Thanks for listening to my saga. Sorry. And John, I love you. You're such a gem of a person and a husband, and I am really, really grateful that you get to be mine. And yeah, some of the things I get to really work through are that I'm feeling undeserving of that unconditional love right now, that I am still in a self-beat-up conversation with myself, that I'm so hard on myself all the time. And ultimately, I'm just feeling really grateful as kind of this is all settling, and, you know, my like fight or flight, probably adrenal response is no longer freaking out. I'm feeling so much gratitude, actually, for the fact that I've been receiving these lessons so powerfully in the last 48 hours. Like, yeah, I've been in a total meltdown state myself, but like, what a powerful realization to recognize what's in my gap. Like, holy shit. If I woke up yesterday and was like, well, I'm about to have like an entire lifestyle shift because I'm about to make like a series of 10 really silly mistakes that I just want to rip my own hair out about. Yeah, life happens. It's an interesting journey. So thank you guys so much for joining in. I'm sorry that this was really like a total Melissa's Musings vomit onto my space here, but I'm really committed. I get to be more patient, and that really starts with myself. So I'm going to finish up my work, and I'm going to cook dinner, and I'm going to call it a night, I think, and not work till like 1 a.m. tonight. And no balls will get dropped. I'm going to really delegate. I'm going to defer some things. I'm going to delete some things off my to-do list, and then I'm going to focus on making my husband an amazing dinner to come home to, since he's covering the work that we both committed to, and I couldn't perform because I'm having a meltdown by myself over here. And yeah, that's where I'm at, you guys. So keeping it real over here on Melissa's Musings. Thanks for watching my meltdown. I love you. And you know, I don't know if this was helpful at all for any of you, but I really hope that if you're in a self-beat-up conversation and you're as hard on yourself as I am with myself, that this can also help you to understand that you've got really unrealistic expectations for yourself, and that you're a gem of a human being, and that no matter what silly mistakes you make, life still goes on, and everybody makes mistakes. It's what I'm learning to embrace today. I love you guys. I'll talk to you soon.